The crystal chandelier above the grand foyer caught the afternoon light and scattered it across marble floors, so polished Elena could see her own reflection. She moved quickly, white dustcloth in hand, wiping down the ornate mahogany table that probably cost more than her mother's entire apartment. The Castellano estate didn't tolerate imperfection. Not in its architecture, not in its business dealings, and certainly not in its staff. Elena Moretti had worked here for 3 months. 87 days, to be exact, though she tried not to count them like a prisoner marking time. The pay was exceptional, triple what she'd made cleaning office buildings downtown, but it came with rules that felt like they'd been carved in stone. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact with family members. Don't ask questions about the men in expensive suits who arrived at odd hours and left looking either satisfied or terrified. Most importantly, stay invisible. She was good at invisible. 26 years old, and she perfected the art of moving through spaces without leaving an impression. Small frame, dark hair always pulled back in a tight bun, uniform perfectly pressed. She cleaned bathrooms that gleamed like showrooms, dusted artwork worth more than her annual salary, and never, ever let herself wonder too much about the source of all this wealth. The burned hands were her own fault. That's what she kept telling herself as she worked, trying to ignore the way her palms screamed with every movement. It had happened 2 hours ago in the estate's industrial kitchen, the one used for the large dinner parties Domenico Castellano threw twice a month. She'd been scrubbing a massive stock pot, the kind restaurant kitchens used, when Marco, one of the estate's drivers, had pushed past her roughly, muttering something in Italian she didn't quite catch. The pot had tipped. Scalding water, still hot from the dishwasher's steam cycle, had cascaded over her hands before she could pull back. The pain had been instant and blinding, but Elena had bitten down on her scream hard enough to taste blood. Making a scene would draw attention. Attention meant questions. Questions meant Maria, the head housekeeper, would get involved. And Maria had made it crystal clear during Elena's first week that any employee who caused problems would be replaced immediately. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. So Elena had run her hands under cold water for exactly 90 seconds. Any longer, and someone would notice her absence. Wrapped them in paper towels she'd stuffed in her uniform pockets, and returned to work. The paper towels were soaked through now, stuck to her skin in places where blisters had already formed. She kept her hands behind her back whenever possible, gripping the dust cloth in a way that distributed the pressure across her forearms instead of her palms. The afternoon stretched ahead of her. The east wing needed to be cleaned before Domenico returned from whatever business kept him in the city until evening. Elena had learned his schedule through careful observation. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays he left the estate at 9 in the morning and returned around 7. Tuesdays and Thursdays he worked from his office on the second floor, the one with double doors and a lock that required both a key and a fingerprint scan. Today was Friday. She had 4 hours. The pain in her hands had evolved from sharp and immediate to a deep, throbbing ache that radiated up her wrists. Every time she gripped something, a doorknob, a spray bottle, the handle of a vacuum cleaner, fresh agony lanced through her palms. But she kept moving, kept working, because stopping meant going home to her mother's cramped studio apartment in Astoria, where the rent was 2 weeks overdue and the landlord had started leaving increasingly threatening notes under the door. Elena's mother, Sophia, had MS, the kind that came with medical bills that multiplied faster than Elena could pay them. Physical therapy twice a week, medications that cost more than groceries, a walker that insurance had refused to cover. Elena had taken this job specifically because it paid enough to keep her mother housed, fed, and medicated. Losing it wasn't an option. She moved through the east wing methodically. Guest bedroom 1, dust surfaces, vacuum carpet, ensure fresh towels hung in the bathroom. Guest bedroom 2, same routine. The rooms were beautiful in an impersonal way, decorated by someone with exquisite taste and zero emotional connection to the spaces. Heavy curtains in deep burgundy. Bed frames that looked like they belonged in European castles. Artwork depicting Italian countryside scenes that had probably never been visited by anyone who actually lived here. By the time she reached the third guest room, the paper towels around her hands had become useless. Blood and clear fluid. She tried not to think about whether it was infection or just normal blister drainage. Had soaked through completely. Elena ducked into the bathroom and unwrapped her hands carefully, hissing through her teeth as the paper stuck to raw flesh. The burns were worse than she thought. Both palms were angry red, scattered with white blisters that had already burst in places. The skin around the worst areas had taken on a waxy quality that made her stomach turn. She needed proper medical attention. Burn cream at minimum. Bandages that would actually protect the wounds instead of just hiding them. She couldn't afford any of it. Elena ran her hands under cold water again, biting her lip hard enough to draw blood to keep from crying out. Then she dried them as gently as possible with the bathroom's expensive hand towels, which she'd have to wash later to remove the bloodstains, and wrapped them in fresh paper towels from her pockets. The supply was running low. She'd have to make these last. The vacuum cleaner was next. Elena approached it the way she might approach a dangerous animal. The handle required a firm grip to maneuver properly, and her hands were already shaking from pain and exhaustion. She took a breath, wrapped her fingers around the handle, and immediately regretted every decision that had led to this moment. Pain exploded through her palms. White-hot and consuming, she dropped the vacuum handle and pressed her hands against her abdomen, doubling over slightly as nausea rolled through her. Blood seeped through the fresh paper towels. She was making a mess, evidence of her injury scattered across the pristine guest room. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She had to clean this up. Had to finish the east wing before anyone noticed. Had to. What the hell happened? The voice came from the doorway. Male. Low. Carrying the kind of authority that made people straighten their spines automatically. Elena's head snapped up. Her heart stopped. Domenico Castellano stood in the doorway of the guest room, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been built specifically for his body. Which it probably had. At 34, he was younger than Elena had expected when she first started working here. She'd imagined someone older, grayer, marked by the weight of whatever empire he commanded. Instead, Domenico looked like he belonged in magazines. Dark hair swept back from a face all sharp angles and strong lines. Green eyes that missed nothing. 6'3" of controlled power wrapped in Italian wool. Elena had seen him exactly 4 times in 3 months. Once from a distance as he walked through the main hall. Twice from the kitchen doorway as he met with associates in the dining room. Once up close when she'd been cleaning the second-floor hallway and he'd walked past without acknowledging her existence. He'd never spoken to her. Had never looked directly at her. Until now. "I asked you a question." Domenico stepped into the room. His eyes went to her hands, still pressed against her stomach, then to the dropped vacuum cleaner, then to the small spots of blood on the carpet. "What happened to your hands?" Elena's mind went blank. Every prepared answer she'd rehearsed for situations like this. Injuries that couldn't be hidden, mistakes that drew attention, evaporated. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. "Nothing, sir. I'm fine." "You're bleeding on my carpet." The observation was delivered without heat. Just fact. Elena looked down and saw he was right. Small red spots darkened the cream-colored carpet where she'd been standing. Evidence she couldn't explain away. "I'll clean it," she said quickly. "It won't stain. I have supplies that—" "Show me your hands." It wasn't a request. Elena's pulse hammered. She kept her hands pressed against her uniform, hidden from view. "They're fine, sir. Just a small accident in the kitchen. Nothing serious." Domenico crossed the space between them in 3 strides. He moved with the kind of fluid grace that came from absolute confidence in one's own body. When he stopped in front of her, Elena had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. The green was darker up close. More complicated. Gold flecks scattered through the iris like stars in a night sky. "I don't like repeating myself," he said quietly. "Show me your hands." Elena's throat tightened. She could refuse. Could insist she was fine and hope he lost interest. But something in his tone told her that wasn't going to work. Domenico Castellano was a man accustomed to being obeyed. Fighting that authority would only make things worse. Slowly, she brought her hands forward, kept them curled into loose fists, trying to hide the worst of the damage. Domenico looked at her closed hands, then back at her face. "Open them." Elena's eyes burned. She blinked hard and uncurled her fingers. The paper towels fell away, revealing palms that looked like raw meat. Blisters, blood, skin that had peeled back in places to expose the tender flesh underneath. The full extent of the damage she'd been trying to hide for the past 2 hours. The silence stretched. Domenico stared at her hands with an expression Elena couldn't read. Not anger, not disgust, something colder, more dangerous. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. Who did this? Elena blinked. Sir, who did this? Each word was precisely enunciated, controlled fury wrapped in careful pronunciation. Give me a name. No one did this, Elena said quickly. It was an accident. I was cleaning in the kitchen, and I knocked over a pot of hot water. That's all. Just clumsy. Domenico's eyes narrowed. You're lying. I'm not. You've worked here for 3 months. His gaze never left her face. I've watched you clean. You're not clumsy. You're meticulous. Careful. You don't knock things over. Elena's breath caught. He watched her? She'd spent 3 months perfecting the art of invisibility, and he'd been paying attention the entire time? Sometimes accidents happen, she tried. Not like this. Domenico reached for her wrists. Not her hands, she noticed, but her wrists, and turned her palms up toward the light. His touch was surprisingly gentle. Clinical. Like a doctor examining a patient. These are second-degree burns. Multiple locations. The pattern suggests hot water, which means someone either threw it or pushed you into it. Elena's pulse raced. No one pushed me. I swear. Marco walked past and I lost my balance and the pot tipped. That's all. Marco. The name was delivered like a death sentence. Marco the driver. He didn't mean to, Elena said quickly. He was in a hurry. It wasn't his fault. Domenico released her wrists and pulled his phone from his pocket. He typed something quickly, one-handed, while keeping his eyes on her face. You're protecting him. I'm not protecting anyone. I'm just telling you what happened. You're telling me what you think will keep you out of trouble. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. But you're already in trouble. The question is whether you want my help getting out of it. Elena's stomach dropped. I don't want to cause problems. Too late. Domenico stepped back and gestured toward the door. Come with me. Sir, I need to finish the East Wing. Maria will. Maria works for me. So do you. And right now, I'm telling you to come with me. He waited, one eyebrow raised. Unless you'd prefer I carry you. Elena's face burned. The idea of Domenico Castellano carrying her anywhere made her lightheaded in a way that had nothing to do with pain or blood loss. She nodded stiffly and followed him out of the guest room, leaving the vacuum cleaner and blood-stained carpet behind. They walked through the East Wing in silence. Elena kept her hands pressed against her sides, trying to minimize the blood dripping onto the marble floors. Every step sent fresh jolts of pain through her palms, but she bit her tongue and focused on keeping pace with Domenico's long strides. He led her to the first floor, down a hallway she'd never been allowed to enter. Private family quarters, according to Maria. Staff didn't belong here. But Domenico pushed through a heavy wooden door without hesitation and gestured for Elena to follow. The room beyond was smaller than she expected. Personal. A sitting area with leather furniture that actually looked used. Bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. A desk covered in papers, and what looked like architectural drawings. French doors leading to a private terrace overlooking gardens Elena had only seen from a distance. Sit, Domenico said, pointing to one of the leather chairs. Elena sat. Her uniform was probably leaving bloodstains on the expensive leather, but Domenico didn't seem to care. He crossed to a cabinet in the corner and pulled out what looked like a tackle box. When he brought it back and set it on the coffee table, Elena saw was actually a medical kit. Professional grade. The kind trauma centers kept stocked. Domenico pulled the coffee table closer to her chair, opened the medical kit, and began laying out supplies. Sterile gauze, burn cream, medical tape, scissors, a bottle of something clear that was probably going to hurt worse than the original injury. Give me your hands, he said without looking up. Elena extended her hands slowly. Domenico took them in his own. His hands were warm, large enough to make hers look small, marked with faint scars she didn't let herself examine too closely, and began cleaning the wounds with a gentleness that shocked her. The clear liquid was saline solution. It stung, but nothing like Elena expected. Domenico worked methodically, rinsing away blood and debris, his movements precise and practiced. Like he'd done this before. Many times. "You should be in a hospital," he said quietly. "I can't afford a hospital." "I can." Elena looked up sharply. "I'm not asking you to pay for anything." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He set aside the saline-soaked gauze and reached for the burn cream. "These need proper treatment. Antibiotics to prevent infection. Professional bandaging. Probably pain medication that actually works. I'll be fine with over-the-counter stuff." "No, you won't." Domenico began applying the burn cream with the same careful precision he'd used for cleaning. The cool gel brought immediate relief, and Elena had to bite back a sigh. Second-degree burns over this much surface area require medical supervision. Otherwise you risk infection, scarring, permanent nerve damage. "I heal fast." "Not fast enough." He finished applying the cream and reached for the sterile gauze. "I'm taking you to a private clinic in the city. They'll treat you properly. No billing questions. No insurance requirements. Just treatment." Elena shook her head. "I can't leave work." "You're injured." "I need this job." Domenico's hand stilled. He looked up from her palms to her face, and Elena saw something shift in his expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. "You think I'm going to fire you because you got hurt. I think accidents that require medical attention and cause delays in work are grounds for termination." Elena kept her voice steady. "That's what Maria told us during orientation. Maria doesn't make those decisions. I do." Domenico resumed bandaging her hands, wrapping the gauze with expert precision. "And I don't fire people for getting injured on my property, especially when the injury was caused by one of my other employees. It was an accident. It was negligence." He secured the gauze with medical tape. "Marco pushed past you without paying attention to his surroundings. That negligence resulted in your injury, which makes it my responsibility to address." Elena watched him work, the way his fingers moved with certainty, the way he transformed from the intimidating figure in the doorway to this man, carefully bandaging her hands like it mattered. Like she mattered. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Domenico finished taping the second hand and sat back. "Because you work for me. Because you were injured in my house. Because you're sitting here with burns that should have sent you to an emergency room 2 hours ago, and you're trying to hide them so you don't lose your job." He met her eyes. "Those are enough reasons. Most people wouldn't care." "I'm not most people." No, Elena thought. No, he definitely wasn't. Domenico stood and walked to his desk. He pulled open a drawer and removed a checkbook, actual paper checks, which Elena hadn't seen anyone use in years, and wrote something quickly. Then he tore out the check and brought it back to where she sat. "This covers your medical expenses," he said, holding out the check. "Plus 2 weeks of paid leave while you recover." Elena stared at the paper. The amount written there was more than she made in a month. "I can't accept this." "You can and you will." Domenico set the check on the coffee table in front of her. "Consider it compensation for the fact that my employee's carelessness resulted in your injury." "That's too much money." "That's exactly the right amount of money." He pulled his phone out again and typed something. "I'm having Carlos bring the car around. He'll drive you to the clinic, wait while you're treated, and take you home afterward." Elena's mind raced. This was happening too fast. Too much kindness from someone who was supposed to be dangerous. Too much attention from a man she was supposed to avoid. "I should finish the East Wing first." "The East Wing can wait." "Maria won't." "I'll handle Maria." Domenico's tone left no room for argument. "Right now, you're going to let Carlos drive you to the clinic. You're going to let the doctors treat your hands properly. And you're going to take 2 weeks off to heal before you even think about coming back to work." Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to insist she was fine, that she could handle this on her own, that she didn't need his help or his money or his unexpected kindness. But her hands throbbed despite the burn cream. Her head felt light from pain and adrenaline. And the check sitting on the coffee table represented security she couldn't afford to turn down. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you." Domenico nodded once. "Carlos will be here in 5 minutes." Wait in the main foyer." He started to turn away, then paused. "And Elena!" She looked up, startled that he knew her name. In 3 months of working here, she'd never heard him use it. "If anyone else on my staff treats you poorly," he said, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous, "you tell me immediately." "Understood." Elena nodded. She didn't trust her voice. "Good." Domenico walked back to his desk and picked up his phone. The conversation was clearly over. Elena stood carefully, picked up the check with her newly bandaged hands, and walked toward the door. She was almost through it when his voice stopped her. "Elena!" She turned back. Domenico was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You're not invisible. Not to me." The words hit harder than they should have. Elena's throat tightened. She nodded once, and left before he could see the tears that were suddenly threatening to spill over. Carlos was waiting in the main foyer exactly 5 minutes later. He was older than Elena expected, probably in his 60s, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that immediately put her at ease. He didn't ask questions about her bandaged hands, just opened the car door. A black Mercedes that probably cost more than her mother's yearly medical bills, and helped her settle into the leather seats. The clinic was in Manhattan, tucked into a building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. Carlos walked her inside, spoke briefly with the receptionist in Italian, and waited while a nurse led Elena back to an examination room. The doctor who treated her was young, efficient, and clearly accustomed to patients who arrived with unusual injuries and no questions about payment. She examined Elena's hands carefully, asked about pain levels and mobility, then re-cleaned and re-bandaged the burns with supplies that made Domenico's medical kit look like a first aid kit from a drugstore. "You'll need to keep these clean and dry," the doctor said as she worked. "Change the bandages twice a day. Apply the antibiotic cream I'm prescribing. Take the pain medication as directed, even if you think you don't need it. Burns hurt more on day 2 than day 1. Elena nodded, absorbing instructions she'd probably forget the moment she left. The doctor secured the final bandage and looked at Elena directly. "You're lucky. These could have been much worse. But they're going to hurt for at least a week, and they'll be sensitive for several weeks after that. No heavy lifting. No submerging in water. No returning to whatever caused this until they're fully healed." "Understood." "I'm serious about the medication." The doctor handed her 2 prescription bottles. One is an antibiotic to prevent infection. The other is for pain. Don't be a hero. Take them. Elena accepted the bottles with her bandaged hands. The pharmacist downstairs filled the prescriptions while she waited, and Carlos appeared the moment she emerged with the medications. He drove her back to Astoria in comfortable silence, only speaking when they pulled up outside her mother's building. "Mr. Castellano said to tell you the car is available whenever you need it during your recovery," Carlos said. "Medical appointments, grocery shopping, whatever you need. Just call the main number and ask for me." Elena stared at him. "That's not necessary. Mr. Castellano believes it is." Carlos smiled slightly. "He's very particular about taking care of his people." His people? Elena had never thought of herself that way. She was just staff, invisible labor that kept the estate running. But apparently, to Domenico, she was more than that. "Thank you," she said quietly. Carlos nodded. "Take care of yourself, Miss Moretti. We'll see you in 2 weeks." Elena climbed the 3 flights of stairs to her mother's apartment slowly, her hands throbbing with each step. The key was difficult to manage with bandaged fingers, but she finally got the door open and stepped inside. Sophia was in her recliner by the window, reading a paperback with her glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when Elena entered and immediately set the book aside. "Elena, you're home early. What happened to your hands?" Elena set her purse and the medications on the small table by the door. "Accident at work. I'm fine." Sophia stood slowly, using her walker for support. She crossed to Elena and took her bandaged hands gently. "This doesn't look fine. What kind of accident?" "Hot water. In the kitchen. It's not as bad as it looks." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You saw a doctor?" "Just got back from the clinic. They cleaned and bandaged everything. Gave me antibiotics and pain medication. I'll be fine in a couple weeks." "A couple weeks?" Sophia's voice rose slightly. "Elena, if you can't work, I have paid leave. Elena pulled the check from her purse and set it on the table. 2 weeks, plus coverage for medical expenses. Sophia stared at the check. This is from your employer, Domenico Castellano. He insisted. The same Domenico Castellano you said never notices staff. Elena's face warmed. Apparently he notices more than I thought. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, studying her daughter's face with the kind of perception that came from 26 years of motherhood. Elena, be careful. I am careful. I mean with him. With this situation. Sophia touched the check lightly. Men like Domenico Castellano don't usually show this much concern for household staff. If he's paying this much attention to you, he's just being responsible, Elena interrupted. One of his other employees caused the accident. He's covering the consequences. That's all. Is it? Elena thought about Domenico's hands gently bandaging her wounds. About the way he'd looked at her and said she wasn't invisible. About the fury in his voice when he demanded to know who hurt her. I don't know, she admitted quietly. Sophia sighed and pulled Elena into a careful hug, mindful of her injured hands. Just promise me you'll be smart. These men, the ones with that kind of wealth and power, they're dangerous, even when they're being kind. I know, Mom. Do you? Because you're looking at that check like it's more than just money. Elena pulled back. It is more than money. It's rent for the next 2 months. It's your medications. It's breathing room we haven't had in years. And what does he want in return? Nothing. He didn't ask for anything. He will. Sophia's expression was sad but certain. Men like that always do. Eventually. Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that Domenico was different, that his kindness was genuine, that he'd asked for nothing but her recovery. But her mother had lived longer and seen more. Had survived an abusive marriage and years of illness and endless financial struggle. If Sophia said to be careful, there was probably a reason. I'll be smart, Elena promised. 2 weeks of recovery, then back to work. Just cleaning. Nothing more complicated than that. Sophia nodded slowly. Okay. But Elena? Yeah. If he offers you anything else, more money, better position, anything that feels too good to be true, you call me first. Before you make any decisions. Promise. I promise. That night, Elena lay in bed unable to sleep. Her hands throbbed despite the pain medication. The bandages felt restrictive. Every position she tried was uncomfortable. But more than physical discomfort, her mind kept circling back to Domenico's private sitting room. The way he'd looked at her burns like they personally offended him. The precision with which he'd bandaged her hands. The quiet fury when he'd said Marco's name. The matter-of-fact way he'd written a check that represented more money than Elena usually saw in months. She thought about what her mother had said. About men with wealth and power being dangerous. About kindness coming with a price. About promises that seemed too good to be true, usually being exactly that. But she also remembered Domenico's hands on her wrists. Gentle. Careful. Clinical but somehow intimate. She remembered the way he'd said her name. Not dismissively, or with the detachment most employers used. But like it mattered. Like she mattered. Elena had spent 3 months being invisible. Keeping her head down. Doing her work efficiently and without complaint. She told herself it was safer that way. That invisibility was protection. But Domenico had seen her anyway. And now that he had, Elena wasn't sure how to go back to being invisible again. Even if it was probably the smart thing to do. The first 3 days of recovery passed in a haze of pain medication and restless sleep. Elena's hands hurt worse on. Day 2, exactly as the doctor had predicted. By day 3, the sharp agony had dulled to a constant ache that made even simple tasks, brushing her teeth, opening the refrigerator, turning doorknobs, frustratingly difficult. Sophia helped where she could, but her MS made prolonged standing and fine motor tasks challenging. They developed a system. Elena would position things within reach. Sophia would open containers and prepare meals with slow, deliberate movements. They adapted, the way they always had. On day 4, Elena woke to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She fumbled for it with bandaged hands, nearly dropping it twice before managing to check the screen. Unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. Hello. Miss Moretti. This is Maria from the Castellano estate. Elena's stomach dropped. The head housekeeper had a reputation for being efficient and unforgiving. Elena had spent 3 months avoiding any situation that might bring her to Maria's attention. Apparently, getting injured and taking medical leave qualified. "Good morning, Maria," Elena said, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Mr. Castellano asked me to check on your recovery. How are your hands?" The question was delivered with professional courtesy, but no warmth. Elena couldn't tell if Maria was genuinely concerned or simply following orders. "They're healing well. The doctor said 2 weeks, and I should be able to return to work." "Mr. Castellano wants you to take 3 weeks." Elena blinked. "I'm sorry. 3 weeks paid leave. He believes 2 weeks isn't sufficient time for burns of that severity to heal properly." Maria's tone suggested she disagreed with this assessment but wasn't going to argue with her employer. "You're to focus entirely on recovery. No work-related concerns." "That's very generous, but I don't need—" Mr. Castellano was quite clear about his expectations, Miss Moretti. 3 weeks. Carlos will be available for any transportation needs. Your position is secure. Is there anything else you require for your recovery?" Elena's mind went blank. "No. Thank you." "Very well. I'll inform Mr. Castellano that you're progressing appropriately. Good day, Miss Moretti." The line went dead before Elena could respond. She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. 3 weeks. Most employers would have given her 3 days, if that. Some wouldn't have paid for medical treatment at all. But Domenico had not only covered everything, he'd extended her leave beyond what the doctor recommended. Her mother's warning echoed in her mind. Men like that always want something eventually. But what could Domenico Castellano possibly want from a housemaid who cleaned guest rooms and scrubbed floors? Elena spent the rest of the morning trying not to think about it. By day 7, Elena could manage most daily tasks with modified technique and careful movement. The burns had started to heal, new skin forming beneath the bandages in shades of pink and red that looked angry but healthy. She changed the dressings twice daily, applied the prescribed antibiotic cream, and took the pain medication as directed, even though she hated the way it made her mind feel fuzzy. She was in the small kitchen making tea when someone knocked on the apartment door. 3 short raps. Pause. 2 more. The pattern was specific enough to make her pause. Sophia looked up from her book. "Are you expecting someone?" "No." Elena set down the kettle and crossed to the door. The peephole revealed a man in a dark suit holding a large gift basket wrapped in cellophane. Not Carlos. Someone younger, unfamiliar. Elena opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" "Delivery for Elena Moretti." The man held out the basket. "From Mr. Castellano." Elena stared at the basket. It was enormous. Filled with items she couldn't quite identify through the cellophane but which looked expensive in that understated way truly expensive things had. "I didn't order anything." "It's a gift, miss. Mr. Castellano wanted to ensure you had everything necessary for your recovery." The man set the basket down just inside the door, nodded politely, and left before Elena could form a response. She picked up the basket with awkward, bandaged hands and carried it to the kitchen table. Sophia wheeled her walker over. "What is that?" "Apparently a get-well gift from my employer." "That's not a get-well gift. That's a statement." Elena unwrapped the cellophane carefully. Inside were items clearly chosen with thought rather than grabbed from a generic gift catalog. High-end tea, multiple varieties, all loose leaf in tins decorated with Italian designs. Shortbread cookies from a bakery Elena recognized from passing it in Manhattan but could never afford. A hardcover book about Italian architecture. Specialty hand lotion designed for sensitive skin. New bandages and medical supplies. A card in heavy cream cardstock. Elena opened the card with shaking fingers. Recovery should include small comforts. Take the time you need. DC. The handwriting was precise. Masculine. The kind of penmanship taught in expensive private schools. "Elena," Sophia said quietly. "What did I tell you? He's just being thoughtful. He's courting you." Elena laughed, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. Men like Domenico Castellano don't court housemaids. "Then what do you call this?" Sophia gestured to the basket. "This is an employer consideration. This is personal attention." Elena wanted to argue. wanted to insist her mother was wrong, that this was just Domenico being thorough about employee welfare, that there was nothing personal about any of it. But the tea varieties were ones she'd mentioned loving during a conversation with another staff member months ago. The book was about architecture she'd been caught studying during her lunch breaks. The hand lotion was specifically formulated for burns. He'd been paying attention, not just to her injury, but to her, to the details that made her more than just invisible staff. "What do I do?" Elena asked quietly. Sophia was silent for a long moment. "You finish healing. You go back to work. And you're very, very careful about what signals you send back to him." "I haven't sent any signals. You accepted his gift. You accepted his money. You accepted 3 weeks of paid leave." Sophia's expression was complicated, worried but also resigned. "I'm not saying you shouldn't have. We needed all of those things. But Elena, in his world, acceptance means something. It creates obligation, expectation. He didn't ask for anything in return. Not yet." Elena looked at the gift basket, at the evidence of someone powerful taking time to notice what would bring her comfort. It should have felt threatening, should have triggered every warning her mother had spent years instilling. Instead, it felt like being seen in a way she'd spent her entire adult life avoiding. And that terrified her more than any explicit demand ever could. The following Wednesday, Elena received a text from an unknown number. "This is Domenico Castellano. Carlos mentioned you haven't used the car service. Do you need transportation to any medical appointments?" Elena stared at her phone. She'd given the estate her number during the hiring process, but she'd never expected Domenico to have it personally. Never expected him to text her directly rather than communicate through Maria or Carlos. She typed carefully with still bandaged fingers. "No appointments necessary. Doctor said I'm healing well. Thank you for checking." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Then good. Have you been changing bandages properly? Twice daily. Following all instructions. Pain medication working?" "Yes. Thank you. If you need anything, medical supplies, groceries, transportation, contact Carlos directly. He has instructions to prioritize your needs." Elena's throat tightened. "That's very generous. But I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You're recovering from an injury sustained on my property. Ensuring you have what you need is my responsibility." There was that word again. Responsibility. Like she was something he'd taken ownership of without asking permission. Elena set the phone down without responding. But an hour later, she picked it up again and sent one more message. "Thank you. For everything." The response came within seconds. "You're welcome." On day 10, Elena's hands had healed enough that she could do more than basic tasks. The blisters had resolved, leaving behind new skin that was tender but functional. She could grip things without crying, could open jars, could type on her phone with only minor discomfort. She was restless. 3 weeks of sitting in a small apartment felt like prison after months of constant work. She needed air, space, something to occupy her mind beyond daytime television and paperback novels. She texted Carlos. Would it be possible to use the car service today? Just for a few hours. His response was immediate. "Of course, Miss Moretti. Where would you like to go?" Elena hadn't thought that far ahead. She typed quickly. "Anywhere with a good bookstore. And maybe a coffee shop. I know exactly the place. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Carlos arrived exactly on time, driving the same black Mercedes. He opened the door for Elena with a smile that reached his eyes. "Miss Moretti, it's good to see you looking better." "Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate you doing this." "It's my pleasure. Mr. Castellano wants to ensure you're comfortable during your recovery." He waited until she was settled, then closed the door and rounded to the driver's seat. "I'm taking you to a neighborhood in Brooklyn. Italian area. The bookstore there has an excellent selection, and the cafe next door makes the best cannoli outside of Sicily." They drove through the city in comfortable silence. Elena watched New York blur past the tinted windows, feeling strangely disconnected from the life she'd been living just 2 weeks ago. Everything looked the same but felt different, like she'd stepped sideways into an alternate version of her existence. The bookstore Carlos chose was small and charming, tucked between a bakery and a shop selling imported Italian goods. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, worn hardwood floors, the smell of old paper and coffee. Elena could have spent hours here. "I'll be right outside whenever you're ready," Carlos said. "Take your time." Elena wandered the aisles, running careful fingers over book spines. Art history, Italian literature, architecture. She found herself in the photography section, drawn to a massive volume about Italian villas and their gardens. The kind of book that cost more than she usually spent on groceries. She was leafing through it, admiring photographs of estates that probably looked similar to where she worked, when someone spoke behind her. "That's a beautiful collection." Elena turned. A woman stood there, probably mid-50s, with silver threading through dark hair and the kind of elegant style that suggested old money. She wore simple clothes, black slacks, cream blouse, but the fabric quality and tailoring marked them as expensive. "It is," Elena agreed. "I was just admiring the gardens." "You appreciate Italian architecture?" "I clean an estate that has similar features. I've always been curious about the design principles behind them." Elena closed the book carefully and started to put it back on the shelf. "You work at an estate?" The woman's interest seemed genuine rather than condescending. "Which one, if you don't mind me asking?" Elena hesitated. Most people in Domenico's world kept details private, but this was just casual conversation in a bookstore. "The Castellano estate, just outside the city." The woman's expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough that Elena noticed. Recognition. And something else. Concern, maybe. "Domenico's estate," the woman said quietly. Elena's guard went up immediately. "You know him." "I'm his aunt, Lucia Castellano." She extended her hand. "And you're Elena Moretti, the housemaid my nephew has been very concerned about." Elena shook her hand carefully, hyper-aware of her still-healing palms. "He told you about me?" "Domenico tells me very little, but his staff tells me everything." Lucia's smile was warm but knowing. "They mentioned he personally treated your injuries, arranged for private medical care, extended your leave, sent a rather extravagant gift basket." She paused. "My nephew doesn't usually involve himself in household staff matters. I think he just feels responsible because the accident happened on his property." "Perhaps." Lucia studied Elena with the same careful attention Domenico brought to everything. "Or perhaps he sees something in you that goes beyond staff dynamics." Elena's face heated. "I'm sure that's not. My nephew is 34 years old. He's been running the family business since he was 22. In all that time, I've never seen him show personal interest in anyone." Lucia's expression softened. "Until now. He barely knows me. Domenico doesn't need long to assess value. It's what makes him effective in business. And apparently," Lucia gestured to Elena's bandaged hands, "in recognizing when someone matters." Elena didn't know how to respond to that. The idea that she mattered to Domenico Castellano, that she registered as more than just another employee, felt both thrilling and terrifying. "I should go," Elena said quietly. "My driver is waiting." "Carlos!" Lucia smiled. "He's been with our family for 20 years. If Domenico assigned him to you personally, that's another signal." "Signal of what?" "That you're under his protection. That anyone who wants to harm you goes through him first." Lucia's expression turned serious. "That's not a small thing, Elena. In our world, protection like that comes with weight. Expectation. Obligation. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything, and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. "Everyone keeps warning me about that," Elena said. "But no one tells me what the expectation actually is. Because it varies." Lucia pulled a business card from her purse and handed it to Elena. "But if you need advice, someone who understands both Domenico and what it's like to navigate his world as a woman, call me. Anytime." Elena took the card. Lucia Castellano. A phone number. No title or business affiliation. "Why would you help me?" Elena asked. "Because I like my nephew, and I think you might be good for him." Lucia's smile was sad. "Domenico has spent 12 years building an empire. He's forgotten how to build anything else. If you can remind him, that's worth protecting." She left before Elena could form a response. Elena stood in the bookstore holding a business card and wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. She bought the photography book, using money from Domenico's check because the irony felt appropriate, and met Carlos outside. He took one look at her face and didn't ask questions. Just drove her home in silence, giving her space to process whatever had happened. When they arrived at her apartment, Carlos turned in his seat. "Miss Moretti, may I say something?" Elena nodded. "I've worked for the Castellano family for 2 decades. I've seen Mr. Domenico in many situations, business negotiations, family conflicts, moments of crisis." Carlos's expression was kind but serious. "I've never seen him act the way he's acting now. Personally treating injuries, extending medical leave, arranging transportation. These aren't things he does." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying he cares. More than is wise. More than is safe for either of you." Carlos paused. "You seem like a good person, Miss Moretti. And Mr. Domenico, despite what the world thinks, is also a good person. But good people in bad situations can make choices that hurt everyone involved." Elena's chest tightened. "What should I do?" "That's not for me to say. But whatever you decide, decide it clearly. Don't leave room for misunderstanding. Because in Mr. Domenico's world, misunderstanding gets people killed." The words hung in the air long after Elena had climbed the stairs to her apartment. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her hands had stopped hurting enough that pain wasn't keeping her awake. Instead, her mind circled endlessly through the same questions. What did Domenico want? What did she want? How much danger was she actually in? From his enemies, from his world, or from him? At 2 a.m, her phone buzzed with a text. "Are you awake? Domenico." Elena stared at the screen. She should ignore it. Should maintain professional distance. Should remember all the warnings from her mother, from Lucia, from Carlos. Instead, she typed, "Yes. Can't sleep either? My hands don't hurt anymore." Apparently that was helping. Pain is a distraction. I understand that. Elena hesitated, then typed, "Why are you awake?" The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, thinking about things I shouldn't. Like what? Like whether it's inappropriate to check on employees via text at 2 a.m. Elena's lips curved despite herself. Probably depends on the employee. And what category do you fall into? The question felt loaded. Elena took a breath and typed carefully, "I don't know yet." That's honest. Is that what you want? Honesty. Always. Even when it's uncomfortable. Elena pulled her knees to her chest. Phone cradled in her lap. This felt dangerous. Intimate in a way that had nothing to do with physical proximity and everything to do with vulnerability at odd hours when defenses were low. "Your aunt was at the bookstore today," Elena typed. "Lucia. She told me you don't usually involve yourself in household staff matters." "I usually don't. So why me?" The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, because when I saw your hands, something in me broke. And I haven't figured out how to fix it yet. Elena's breath caught. She stared at the words, reading them 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. "That's not professional," she typed. "I know. It's also not smart. I know that too. Then why are you telling me?" "Because you asked for honesty. And because you deserve to know that what's happening isn't one-sided." Elena set the phone down. Picked it up. Set it down again. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. The point where she could pull back, maintain professional distance, protect herself from whatever complication Domenico represented. Or she could step forward into something that terrified and intrigued her in equal measure. She picked up the phone and typed, "What happens now? Now you finish healing. Come back to work. And we figure this out like adults." "Figure what out?" "Whatever this is between us. And if it's nothing, then it's nothing." "But Elena..." "Yes. I don't think it's nothing." Elena closed her eyes. Neither did she. "I should sleep," she typed. "You should. Good night, Elena." "Good night." She set the phone on the nightstand and lay in darkness, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in the city, Domenico was doing the same thing. Both of them aware that something had shifted, that they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And despite every warning, every logical reason to walk away, Elena found herself hoping that whatever came next, it would be worth the risk. By day 14, Elena's hands had healed enough that the doctor cleared her for light duties. No heavy lifting. No extended water exposure. but normal daily activities were fine. Elena felt simultaneously relieved and anxious. Relief because she could function normally again. Anxiety because going back to work meant facing whatever the situation with Domenico had become. Sophia noticed Elena's nervousness the night before her return. They were eating dinner, takeout from the Chinese place down the block, when her mother set down her chopsticks and looked at her directly. "Are you sure about going back?" "I need the job, Mom." "That's not what I asked." Elena set down her own chopsticks. "I don't know if I'm sure about anything right now. Has he contacted you again? Since the text conversation you told me about?" "Twice. Once to confirm I was cleared by the doctor. Once to let me know Carlos would pick me up tomorrow morning." Elena pushed rice around her plate. "Nothing inappropriate. Just practical information." "And you want it to be inappropriate?" Elena's face burned. "I don't, Elena. I'm your mother. I know what that look means." Sophia's expression was sad but understanding. "You're attracted to him. That's ridiculous. I barely know him." "You know him well enough to text at 2 in the morning. Well enough to accept personal gifts. Well enough to let him treat your injuries when he could have just sent you to a hospital." Sophia reached across the small table and took Elena's hand gently. "I'm not judging you. I'm worried about you. I can handle myself. Can you? Against a man with that much wealth and power?" Sophia squeezed her hand. "Men like Domenico Castellano aren't just rich, Elena. They're dangerous. They operate in worlds where normal rules don't apply, where people disappear if they become problems, where loyalty is bought and sold like any other commodity. You don't know him. I know his reputation. That's enough." Elena pulled her hand back. "His reputation as what? A businessman? A philanthropist? Someone who employs hundreds of people and pays them well? His reputation as someone connected to organizations that don't exist in legal daylight." Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. "You're smart enough to have researched him by now. Smart enough to know that Italian families with that kind of wealth don't just make money through real estate and legitimate business." Elena had researched. Late at night when she couldn't sleep, finding articles that mentioned the Castellano name in connection with investigations that never went anywhere. Rumors of mob connections that were never proven. A family tree that included uncles and cousins with criminal records, carefully separated from the main branch. "He's never been charged with anything," Elena said. "Because men at his level don't get charged. They have lawyers and politicians and systems that protect them." Sophia's expression was pained. "Baby, I'm not telling you what to do. You're 26 years old. You make your own choices. But I need you to understand what you're choosing. I'm choosing to go back to work. That's all. For now." Sophia stood slowly, using her walker for support. "But what happens when he offers you more? When he asks you to dinner, or to accompany him to an event, or to move into a private apartment where he can see you whenever he wants?" "He wouldn't." "Yes, he would. Because that's what men like him do. They identify what they want and they acquire it." Sophia touched Elena's cheek gently. "I just want you to be careful. To remember that you have value beyond what he sees in you. That you deserve to be chosen for who you are, not what you represent or how you make him feel." Elena wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that Domenico was different, that whatever was developing between them was based on genuine connection rather than acquisition or control. But she couldn't, because she didn't actually know what Domenico wanted or why he wanted it. "I'll be careful," Elena promised. "I won't make any decisions without thinking them through. That's all I ask." That night, Elena laid out her uniform for the next day. The same white button-down shirt and black pants she'd worn for 3 months. The same practical shoes that made standing for hours bearable. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 2 weeks ago, she'd been invisible. Content with that invisibility because it meant safety, security, no complications. Now she was preparing to walk back into a situation where one of the most powerful men in the city had explicitly told her he was interested in figuring out what existed between them. Where every interaction would be weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. She should be terrified, and part of her was. But another part, the part that had texted Domenico at 2 in the morning, that had accepted his gifts, that had let herself imagine what it might be like to be seen by someone who actually looked. That part was thrumming with anticipation. Elena Moretti had spent her entire adult life being careful, being smart, being invisible. Maybe it was time to see what happened when she let herself be visible instead. Carlos arrived at 7:30 the next morning, exactly as promised. Elena had been awake since 5, unable to eat breakfast, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on the standard uniform. Her hands trembled slightly as she locked the apartment door behind her. The drive to the estate felt different than it had 3 weeks ago. Then, it had been just another commute to a job she needed. Now, every mile brought her closer to a confrontation she couldn't predict. To a man who'd made his interest clear and was waiting to see what she'd do about it. "Nervous?" Carlos asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Is it that obvious? You've checked your phone 4 times in 10 minutes, and we both know no one's texting you right now." Elena set the phone in her lap. "What's he like? When people come back after extended leave?" Carlos was quiet for a moment, navigating through morning traffic with practiced ease. "Mr. Domenico is professional. He doesn't make staff uncomfortable. He doesn't abuse his position." He paused, but he also doesn't usually develop personal interest in employees. "So I can't tell you what to expect, because this situation is unprecedented." "That's not reassuring. It's honest." Carlos met her eyes in the mirror. "Which I think you value more than reassurance." They pulled through the estate gates at 8 o'clock sharp. The familiar sight of manicured lawns and the imposing mansion should have been comforting. Instead, Elena's stomach twisted with nerves that had nothing to do with returning to work and everything to do with the man somewhere inside. Maria was waiting in the staff entrance, clipboard in hand, expression neutral. "Miss Moretti, welcome back. I trust you're fully recovered?" "Yes, ma'am. The doctor cleared me for regular duties." "Excellent." Maria made a note on her clipboard. "However, Mr. Castellano has requested you avoid any tasks involving heavy lifting or extended water exposure for another week. I've adjusted your assignments accordingly." Elena blinked. "That's not necessary. I'm cleared for—" Mr. Castellano was quite specific about his expectations. Maria's tone suggested she was as surprised by this as Elena. "You'll be handling light cleaning in the main residence only. East and west wings. No kitchen duties. No outdoor work. That's half the normal workload. Mr. Castellano is aware." Maria handed Elena a revised schedule. "Your hours remain the same. Your pay remains the same. The assignments are simply modified until he's satisfied you're completely healed." Elena stared at the schedule. This wasn't just consideration. This was Domenico arranging her work around his concern for her welfare in a way that couldn't be explained as anything other than personal interest. "Where is Mr. Castellano this morning?" Elena asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "In his office. He has meetings scheduled until early afternoon." Maria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Miss Moretti, I've worked for the Castellano family for 15 years. I've seen many things. My advice is to be very clear about your boundaries. Men like Mr. Domenico respect clarity. What they don't respect is hesitation or mixed signals." "I'm not sending mixed signals." "Aren't you? You accepted his medical care, his gift, his extended leave, his personal transportation." Maria's voice was kind but firm. "In his world, acceptance indicates interest. If you're not interested, you need to say so explicitly. If you are interested, you need to understand what that means for your position here." Elena's throat tightened. "What does it mean?" "That depends entirely on what Mr. Domenico wants. And what you're willing to give." Maria left Elena standing in the staff hallway, holding a modified schedule that proved Domenico was still thinking about her welfare, still adjusting his household around her needs, still treating her like she mattered in ways that went far beyond professional courtesy. Elena took a breath and headed to the East Wing. The work was meditative, familiar motions with a dust cloth, the vacuum cleaner, furniture polish that smelled like lemons and made everything shine. Elena fell into rhythm quickly, her body remembering what to do even as her mind raced ahead to inevitable conversations. She was cleaning the 3rd guest room when she felt it, that prickling awareness that came from being watched. Elena turned slowly. Domenico stood in the doorway, dressed in charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No jacket, no tie, more casual than she'd ever seen him during work hours. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. His green eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Welcome back," he said quietly. Elena set down the dust cloth. "Thank you. For the extended leave. The modified schedule. All of it. How are your hands?" She held them up, turning her palms toward him. The skin was still pink in places, still tender but functional. "Healed. The doctor said I was lucky. That it could have been much worse." Domenico crossed the room slowly, stopping a few feet away. Close enough that Elena could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "May I?" Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. He took her hands gently, the same way he had 3 weeks ago in his sitting room. His thumbs traced the healing burns with clinical precision, checking for signs of infection or improper healing. But there was nothing clinical about the way his touch made Elena's pulse race. "You followed all the doctor's instructions?" he asked, still examining her hands. "Every one." "Good." He released her hands but didn't step back. "I need to apologize." Elena blinked. "For what?" "For the texts. The 2 a.m. conversation. Telling you things I shouldn't have." Domenico's expression was carefully controlled. "That was inappropriate. You're my employee. I put you in an uncomfortable position." "You didn't." "I did. And if you want to maintain strict professional boundaries, I'll respect that completely. No more personal texts. No more gifts. Just employer and employee. Your job is secure regardless of your answer." Elena's heart pounded. This was the moment. The choice Maria had warned her about. She could take the safe path. Maintain distance. Keep this job she desperately needed without complication. Or she could step into the unknown with a man who terrified and intrigued her in equal measure. "What if I don't want professional boundaries?" The words came out before Elena could stop them. Domenico went very still. "Then we need to have a conversation about what that means." "Okay. Not here." He glanced at his watch. "I have a meeting that will finish around 7 tonight. Have dinner with me. My private quarters. Just talking. Figuring out what this is, and whether it's something we both want to pursue." Elena should say no. Should insist on neutral ground. Public spaces, situations where power dynamics were less skewed. Instead, she heard herself say, "What time?" 7:30. "I'll have dinner brought in." Nothing formal. Just 2 people having a conversation. "Just talking," Elena repeated. "Just talking," Domenico confirmed. "You have my word. Whatever we discuss, whatever we decide, your position here is protected. You can walk away at any point with no consequences to your employment." "Why me?" The question burst out before Elena could stop it. "You could have anyone. Why focus on a housemaid who cleans your guest rooms?" Domenico's expression softened. "Because you looked at my library and recognized first editions I inherited from my grandfather. Because you use words like Baroque correctly when describing architectural details. Because you work harder than anyone I've ever employed, yet you've never once asked for special treatment or tried to leverage your position into something more." He paused. "And because when I saw your hands burned and bleeding, I wanted to destroy whoever was responsible. That reaction isn't professional. It's personal. And I need to understand why." Elena's breath caught. The honesty in his voice was devastating. Raw in a way she hadn't expected from someone with his reputation. 7:30, she said quietly. 7:30, Domenico agreed. He stepped back, putting professional distance between them again. "Finish your shift. Take your time. Carlos will be available if you need anything." He left before Elena could respond. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Elena cleaned on autopilot, her mind consumed with the conversation ahead. What would they discuss? What did Domenico actually want? What was she willing to give? At 6 o'clock, Maria appeared in the hallway. "Miss Moretti, Mr. Castellano asked me to show you to the guest suite if you'd like to freshen up before dinner." Elena followed Maria to a part of the residence she'd never accessed. The guest suite was elegant without being ostentatious. A bedroom with an ensuite bathroom. A sitting area. Closets that were currently empty. "There are fresh towels," Maria said. Use whatever you need. Mr. Castellano's private quarters are through the door at the end of this hallway. 7:30. Maria left without further comment. Elena stood in the middle of the guest suite and tried to calm her racing heart. She showered quickly, using expensive soap that smelled like lavender, dried her hair, changed into the spare clothes she'd brought, dark jeans and a simple black sweater. Nothing fancy, but clean and presentable. At 7:25, she stood outside the door Maria had indicated. Heavy wood, no obvious lock. She could still walk away. Could tell Domenico this was too complicated, too dangerous, too much. Instead, she knocked. "Come in." Elena opened the door. Domenico's private quarters were nothing like the formal spaces in the rest of the estate. The room was warm, lived in, with comfortable furniture and personal touches that spoke to actual preferences rather than designer choices. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, filled with volumes in Italian, English, and what looked like Latin. A fireplace with flames crackling softly. French doors leading to a private terrace. A dining table set for 2 with food already arranged. Pasta, bread, wine salad. Nothing pretentious. Just dinner. Domenico stood by the fireplace, still wearing the white shirt and charcoal slacks from earlier. He'd left the sleeves rolled up, and Elena caught herself staring at his forearms before forcing her eyes to his face. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for dinner." They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Domenico gestured to the table. "We should eat before it gets cold." The food was excellent. Homemade pasta in a sauce that tasted like it had been simmering for hours. Fresh bread. Wine that Elena sipped carefully, hyper-aware of wanting to keep her head clear. They made small talk. Safe topics. Elena's recovery. The weather. Neutral ground while they both circled the real conversation. Finally, Domenico set down his fork and looked at her directly. "I need you to understand something about my world." Elena set down her own fork. "Okay. My family's wealth comes from legitimate businesses. Real estate, import-export, investments. But we have connections to organizations that operate outside legal boundaries. I don't participate in those activities directly, but I benefit from the relationships, from the protection they provide, from the opportunities they create. The Mafia," Elena said quietly. "That's the simplified version. But yes." Domenico's expression was serious. "I'm telling you this because if we pursue anything beyond professional courtesy, you need to know what you're walking into. My enemies are real. The danger is real. The complications that come with being associated with me are substantial. You're trying to scare me away. I'm trying to give you informed choice." He leaned forward slightly. "I have security, resources, power that can protect you. But it also makes you a target. People will use you to get to me. They'll threaten you, follow you, try to exploit any connection we have." Elena absorbed this. Her mother's warnings, Lucia's careful advice, Carlos's concern. Everyone had been trying to tell her the same thing. That Domenico Castellano wasn't just wealthy and powerful. He was dangerous in ways that extended far beyond personal interaction. "What do you want from me?" Elena asked. "Honestly, I don't know yet." Domenico ran his hand through his hair. "I know I want to spend time with you. Talk to you. Learn who you are beyond the woman who cleans my house. I know that when I imagine my evenings, I'm imagining them with you here. Having dinner, discussing books, existing in the same space. That's not nothing. No, it's not." He met her eyes. "But it's also not a casual arrangement. If we do this, if we explore whatever this connection is, it changes everything. Your safety becomes my priority. Your movements become monitored. Your life gets absorbed into mine in ways you might not be comfortable with." Elena took a breath. "What if I am comfortable with it? Then we take this slowly. We build something based on mutual choice rather than obligation or power dynamics. You keep working here, but we start spending time together outside those hours. Dinners, conversations, getting to know each other like normal people do." "We're not normal people." "No," Domenico agreed. "We're not, but we can try." Elena looked around the room. At the evidence of a life lived in solitude despite wealth and power. At the books that suggested intellectual depth. at the fireplace that created warmth in a space that probably felt cold most nights. She thought about her mother's apartment, the cramped studio, the medical bills, the constant stress of making rent and affording medication. This world Domenico offered was the opposite of all that. Security, comfort, protection from the grinding poverty that had defined Elena's entire adult life. But it was also a cage. Beautiful and gilded, but still a cage, trading one kind of struggle for another. I need time, Elena said, to think about this, to figure out if I'm willing to accept the complications. How much time? I don't know. A few days. A week. Domenico nodded slowly. Take whatever time you need. Your job is secure. Your schedule remains modified. Carlos is still available for transportation. None of that changes regardless of what you decide. And if I say no, if I decide this is too complicated, then we maintain professional boundaries. You keep working here. I keep my distance. We both move forward. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he'd respect her decision either way. But she also knew enough about powerful men to understand that no wasn't always accepted gracefully. As if reading her mind, Domenico said quietly, I'm not my father, or my grandfather, or the uncles who've spent their lives taking what they want without asking permission. I know what my world looks like from the outside. I know the reputation I carry. But Elena, I need you to believe that I would never force you into anything. Your choice matters. Your autonomy matters. Even if it means walking away from something I want. The sincerity in his voice cut through Elena's defenses. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the dangerous Mafia connection or the wealthy employer. Just a man who'd been born into a world he didn't choose, trying to navigate it with whatever integrity he could maintain. I'll think about it, Elena said softly. That's all I'm asking. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Talked about safer things. Books they both read. Places in Italy they'd both like to visit. The kind of conversation that revealed compatibility without demanding commitment. At 9 o'clock, Elena stood to leave. Domenico walked her to the door, maintaining careful distance. Thank you for being honest, Elena said. Thank you for listening. Domenico hesitated, then added, whatever you decide, I want you to know something. What? You're not invisible to me. You never were. From the first day you started working here, I noticed you. The way you moved. The care you took with everything. The intelligence behind your eyes. He paused. I should have kept that observation professional. But I didn't. And now we're here. Elena's throat tightened. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just think about what you want. Not what's smart or safe or practical. What you actually want. He opened the door. Carlos was waiting in the hallway to escort Elena home. The drive back to Astoria passed in silence. Elena stared out the window at the city lights, her mind replaying every word of the conversation. Every look, every moment when Domenico's careful control had slipped to reveal genuine emotion underneath. Sophia was still awake when Elena got home. She took one look at her daughter's face and said, Tell me everything. Elena did. The modified schedule. The dinner invitation. The honest conversation about Domenico's world and the complications that came with it. The choice he'd laid out clearly. The time he'd offered to make that choice. When she finished, Sophia was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? I don't know. That's not true. You know. You're just scared to admit it. Elena met her mother's eyes. I want to say yes. Then why haven't you? Because everyone keeps warning me. You. Lucia. Carlos. Even Domenico himself. Everyone sees danger I'm apparently too blind to recognize. Sophia reached across the small space between them and took Elena's hand. Baby, I'm not warning you because I think you're blind. I'm warning you because I want you to walk into this with your eyes open. To understand the cost and decide if it's worth paying. What if it's not? Then you walk away. You find another job. We figure out the bills like we always have. Sophia's expression was sad but certain. But Elena, I've been watching you the past 3 weeks. You've been more alive than I've seen you in years. That gift basket made you smile for the first time since your father left. Those text conversations gave you something to look forward to. Whether that's because of Domenico specifically, or just the idea of being seen by someone, I don't know. But you deserve to find out. You're giving me permission? I'm giving you support. Whatever you decide. Sophia squeezed her hand. I just want you to be happy. And safe. And smart enough to know when those things aren't compatible. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about choice. Real choice, not the illusion of it. She thought about Domenico's hands carefully bandaging her burns. About the way he'd looked at her in that guest room, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. About the honesty with which he'd laid out his world's darkness alongside its possibilities. She thought about her own life, the years of invisibility, the careful navigation of poverty and responsibility, the endless cycle of working just to survive without ever actually living. What did she want? Not what was smart, not what was safe, what she actually wanted. The answer terrified her, but it was also undeniable. She wanted to be seen, wanted to matter to someone who saw past her circumstances to the person underneath, wanted to exist in a space where her intelligence and care and attention to detail were valued rather than just utilized. She wanted Domenico, despite the danger, despite the complications, despite every logical reason to walk away. 3 days later, Elena texted Domenico. Can we talk? His response was immediate. When? Tonight. After my shift. I'll be in my office. Come whenever you're ready. Elena finished her work in a haze of nervous energy. At 6 o'clock, she changed out of her uniform into the spare clothes she'd started keeping at the estate. Took a breath. Walked to Domenico's office. He answered her knock immediately. Come in. The office was impressive. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk that probably cost more than a car. But Elena barely noticed any of it. Her attention was focused entirely on Domenico, who stood behind his desk watching her with careful neutrality. I've made my decision, Elena said. All right. I want to try this. Whatever this is between us. I want to explore it. Domenico's expression shifted. Relief. Satisfaction. Something deeper that Elena couldn't name. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. He crossed the office slowly, stopping in front of her. Close enough to touch but maintaining distance. We do this right. Slowly. Building something real instead of rushing into complications. Agreed? You keep working here until you decide you don't want to. Your employment is separate from our personal relationship. If one ends, it doesn't automatically end the other. Okay. And Elena, Domenico lifted his hand, cupping her face gently. His thumb traced her cheekbone. If you change your mind, if this becomes too much, if you wake up one day and realize you've made a mistake, you tell me. No consequences. No retaliation. Just honest acknowledgement that this didn't work. Elena leaned into his touch. What if it does work? Then we figure out what that looks like together. He kissed her then. Slowly. Carefully. Like he had all the time in the world and intended to use it, memorizing the feel of her lips against his. Elena's hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the expensive fabric of his shirt. When they pulled apart, Domenico rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to mess this up, probably multiple times. I've spent 34 years building walls and destroying anything that threatened them. I don't know how to let someone in. Then we'll learn together, Elena whispered. You're sure you want to try? I'm sure. Outside, the sun was setting over the estate grounds. Inside, two people from completely different worlds had decided to build something that made no sense on paper but felt inevitable in practice. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be safe. But it would be real. And for Elena Moretti, who'd spent 26 years being invisible, real was worth any risk. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.